Well, after 8 weeks of watching Rusty Sabich be accused of the murder of Carolyn Polhemus, today was the day where we finally found out if he was found guilty, and if not, then who was actually responsible for the killing. This series has been one of the best things on TV recently, and the end of every episode has left me with questions about new suspects and making me truly think about who could have done it. With a conclusion that had a twist when we least expected it, let's jump right into the video and break down all that there was to take away from the season finale of the show. Here is Presumed Innocent Episode 8 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The Ending Explained. So, did anybody guess correctly? I saw some theories floating around in the comments about there being 2 people involved, but I didn't predict Jayden and Rusty being the 2 people that were involved at the crime scene, separately. So it turned out that Jayden, Rusty's daughter, was responsible for the killing of Carolyn, and then at a completely different time, Rusty returned to see Carolyn after he left her earlier on that night and found her dead. And it was during that moment where he then decided to tie her up to make it seem like it was connected to the Bunny Davis case in order to throw off the scent so he could protect the person that he thought did it. This is because he believed that the only person that would be capable of killing Carolyn would be his wife, Barbara. But before we delve right into the ending and the deeper meaning of it all, let's look at the rest of the episode in the lead up to the reveal. The beginning of this episode was focused on the fire poker that was found at Tommy Molto's house at the end of the previous episode, and it was decided that it wouldn't be used in the trial because the prosecutors didn't know whether it was the exact fire poker that was used in the murder. There were no prints and there was no evidence to show that it was taken from Carolyn's house. However, we know that it actually was the murder weapon because Jayden took it after hitting Carolyn with it, buried it, and then drove to Tommy's house on the day of the trial and planted it there because she was getting fearful over the fact that her father was going to go to prison for something that she did. Tommy was the enemy in her eyes. There was a moment in this episode where it was still heavily being implied that Barbara could have been the person that was responsible for the killing. The first time that was shown to us in this episode was when she was concerned about the fire poker and was asking questions about it. There was a look of fear that was in her eyes, and then when everybody walked away, there was a shot of her just sitting there on her own looking down, completely isolated, almost showing that she was in deep thought and that she was worried. However, it turned out that she was just worried about the outcome for her husband. Plus, there was a second time as well. It was when Rusty was found to be innocent, and she didn't really seem happy per se. But she was just looking down and squeezing her hands, almost as if to say that she was concerned that now the search would look towards her. The show was trying to misdirect us into believing that it could have been Barbara, and within the novel and the movie, it was. So I can see why the show decided to lean in on that route. There was a moment in this episode though, before Rusty gave his closing speech, where Jayden went over to him and asked if he wanted any help. This was probably a telling sign that she had a sense of guilt that was within her. She was concerned over her father giving the summation because she felt like it would go against him. The hug that she gave him, before us knowing the true outcome, is one that's just full of love. But after knowing that she was responsible, the longer the hug went on and the look in her eyes was that of worry. Even her body language, slightly hunched over with her hands together, it showed that there was more to what she was feeling. Her body was almost showing us that she was just trying to keep everything buried within. Rusty's summation when in court was one of the standout moments for me in this final episode. We got to see the emotion, passion, and desire to not spend his life behind bars and be found innocent. And when knowing the ending and that he was actually involved in tying up Carolyn after she was dead, it actually showed that he was a bit of a psychopath and that he managed to mislead everybody into believing that he had nothing to do with it, making even us as the audience feel like fools because I didn't suspect him after everything that I'd seen over the few weeks. I think one of the standout lines and most important lines in this episode was, "Reasonable doubt exists in abundance," which begs the question, why are we even here? It was very true. Tommy Molto's case was built upon a personal vendetta against Rusty. He was jealous of every aspect of his life. Rusty had a family. He had the job that Tommy had always wanted, which he did eventually get. Rusty was with Carolyn, and Carolyn didn't want to be around Tommy. Their lives were just complete contrasts. So this was Tommy's chance to get one better on Rusty for life. You could see the envy that was in Tommy's eyes, and when he gave his closing speech, it was nowhere near as powerful as Rusty's. Tommy grew to become obsessed with bringing down Rusty, almost like how Rusty was obsessed with Carolyn. It was all consuming. Even after the verdict of not guilty was found, Tommy's response was, "He beat me." Something which showed that this was a personal case. Rusty represented himself in certain aspects, but his counsel was Raymond and Maya. Yet Tommy didn't mention them at all, so it showed what he was truly feeling, and that's what this whole case was built around, circumstantial evidence that placed Rusty there. When it came to the reveal of the killer in this episode, Rusty believed that it was Barbara, and that's why he admitted to covering up the killing on the night that Carolyn was killed. However, Barbara didn't have a clue what he was on about, and when Jayden walked in, we saw that she admitted to being the killer. I thought it was a good twist. There was a part of me that did suspect Jayden at one point, especially because of the disassociation theory that she mentioned a couple of episodes back, something which Rusty even mentioned in this scene. However, during the flashback, it kind of felt like Carolyn provoked Jayden slightly in telling her that she was pregnant with Rusty's child. Something which just felt a little out of character, and that was ultimately the main thing which led to her ending up being killed. To me, this ending really showed that, as well as Carolyn, Barbara was a victim in all of this, doing her best to keep her family together, a family that's quite literally in pieces and going off the rails. Rusty said to Jayden that they'd never speak of this again, and that she did it in self-defense of the family because he drove her to do it. Rusty also said how they all loved each other. With Barbara in the background in shock as he said that, it showed that she really didn't know her husband or her daughter, meaning that the very family that she was trying to protect all along were strangers. During the final scene, the song You Don't Know Me was being played, and the lyrics You Think You Know Me Well, But You Don't Know Me were being sung as we saw that Raymond had now retired. Tommy Molto had moved on from Rusty Sabich and Carolyn Polhemus, and the Sabich family were enjoying dinner together, laughing and looking like one big happy family. When in reality, there were dark secrets within the core of this family, secrets that could tear it apart. The look that Rusty gave Barbara was one of love, but the look that Barbara gave back was one which had love within it. But the longer it lingered on her, you could see the uncertainty that was in her eyes and the almost fear of being around a family that she really didn't know, connecting to the song that was being played. My review of the finale. I thought the finale was simply great. I thought the pacing of it was really well managed, and we got a sense of uncertainty at the beginning, the verdict in the middle, and the reveal at the end. Was I happy with the reveal? Yeah, I think so. I like the element of Rusty being involved because it kind of tied into the reason as to why those first 48 hours that he misled people actually mattered. And it also showed how good he was at his job in a messed up way. He managed to convince a jury that he was innocent when he was involved in the covering up of Carolyn's death. He's a psychopath. There were quite a few shots in this season of the show where he'd look in a mirror and there'd be two different reflections looking back at him, and I always thought it had meaning behind it, and the reveal definitely confirmed it. The score in this show was also one of the best that I've heard since Succession. I'd even say one of the best pieces of music was when the jury were arriving in the court to deliver the verdict, and there was this sense of dissonance that was really coming across due to the chord that was playing at the end of a well-arranged piece, really making us feel uncomfortable and it wanting us to try and understand how Rusty was feeling in that situation. Even the score when Rusty was giving his summation, it took us on a journey and really complemented the speech well. Each and every actor in this show delivered fantastic performances. There wasn't one role that I thought was miscast or was weaker than the other. They each provided convincing performances that allowed me to truly understand the characters. Jake Gyllenhaal and Bill Camp were my two favourite performers though. Their chemistry on screen was really strong and you could feel the sense of care that was between them. It's kind of haunting that even though Raymond and Rusty were best friends and Raymond almost died defending Rusty and believed that he was innocent, there was actually a sense of guilt that was within Rusty. It really did show that Raymond didn't know his best friend. Even though this case is now closed and the story came to an end, it's actually been confirmed that there's going to be a season 2 of the show. I think this means that it will most likely be an anthology style show where we'll get a different case per season. I personally think that's a great approach for it. There's not many great anthologies out there at the moment, and I think this would act as a frontrunner for it. The show was called Presumed Innocent, yet Rusty was presumed guilty. And although he was only partially guilty, Rusty Sabich and Jayden Sabich got away with it. It's been a pleasure covering the show and theorizing with you all. Until next time. So, there you have it. Presumed Innocent Episode 8, Ending Explained. If you want to see a full breakdown of Presumed Innocent, then click on the card in the top corner. There's an entire playlist there. Are you happy with the ending of the show? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.